Hey everybody, it's me, Pam, Dragon Moon Creations. Welcome back to my channel. I'm going to put you up in the holder here, and I'm going to be working on this little project while I talk to you. Some of my friends from here that are also on Facebook, they already know that I had to help my cat Punky cross the Rainbow Bridge last Friday, the 17th of April. He would have been 17 on May the 5th. That's an approximate birthday, you know, when you pick him up out of a field and adopt him, which I did for him at 4 months. Yeah, that tells you how old they are, so you give them a birthday. What happened was that Punky hadn't been quite himself. His appetite had gone down, and but then all of a sudden he what the old timers would say, pulled up lame on his right front paw. And when he would walk, he would just slide it. You know, this is step and slide, step and slide. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to recreate this. This is a scrap card, and I literally cut the base down a little bit from 4 1/4 to 4 1/8, and from 5 1/2 to 5 3/8 to get it to fit like this. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to Pam's A2 with a question mark scrap card. And Trip, you want to lay down there, buddy? Trip, he gave me my space for a couple of days, and then about the third day he got back on my lap. Well, on the arm of the chair. It's about as close as he is to a lap cat. But anyway, yeah, he got lame, couldn't use that right paw, and then he had just gone to the vet for his yearly checkup on the 27th of March. And whenever I had to take Hallie into the vet, I asked her about Punky and that paw, and she said sometimes in senior cats, their claws will just keep growing and grow under and punch them in the pad, you know, in their toe bean. And I looked at his paw, and sure enough, one of the, I guess a dew claw, I know you call it that in dogs, it had grown all the way over. And so I clipped that, and I trimmed all these nails and trimmed the fur out from around his pad so maybe he wouldn't slide so much. And I massaged it and stuff, and he got better. And it was like a day and a half later, I watched him trying to walk, and he couldn't hardly walk. And I picked him up, looked at him, but it wasn't his front paw, it was his back leg, his back left, which was the opposite paw. And the only reason I can do this now is because I basically stopped crying every other hour. But anyway, he was like, and he would kind of slide, and he would kind of falter, and I picked him up again. I said, Punky, what's going on? And I massaged the leg a little bit, and, you know, looked at it, and he wasn't really reacting when I touched it. You know, usually you touch a cat's back leg and they're jerking it away. He wasn't doing that. I put him down, watched him walk away, and then he just fell. That leg just it's like all of a sudden he just couldn't use it. And he was that way. Let's see. He was that way. It was on, of course, everything happens on a weekend. And I thought, well, maybe he just needs to, you know, maybe I just need to massage it. Maybe just something going on. It'll get better. And it didn't get better. So that Wednesday, which was last Wednesday, I called the vet's office, and I told him, I said, I don't know what is going on with him. I told the girl what was wrong. I said, I really, really need her to squeeze me in before the weekend. Because at this point, I realized he hadn't been going to the bathroom. When that back leg went, he had not pooped. And I took him to the litter box, and he got the scent, and I would help him stand up, and he would pee. Bless his heart. I mean, he would pee, and I was standing there holding up his body. And but then I went out. Let's see. I made the appointment on Wednesday, and she said, can you be here Friday at 8:30 in the morning? And I said yes. That was last Friday, the 17th. And my sister we had planned to go out. So I went ahead on Thursday and went ahead and went out. When I told her what was going on with Punky. And when we came back, she came in. She said, well, just in case, I want to go in and say, and pet Punky. I said, okay. She went in and I checked him and he had wet himself. My husband was there, but if you don't tell him in detail, write it on a piece of paper, this is what you do. Well, Punky had wet himself, and I had got him cleaned up, and that back leg was just totally gone. I mean, he just couldn't use it. He just laid and soiled himself, and he still wasn't pooping. So all that day, all the rest of Thursday, I talked to him and I carried him around. I had him on a towel, and I was carrying him around, and I offered him the litter box, and he was eating. If I put it right between his paws, I put the bowl like right between his paws, but he wasn't drinking on his own. Even if I put a bowl between his paws like that, I was giving him water with a syringe at that point. And so I talked to him all day, and then I texted my son and said, because my granddaughter's band, spring band thing was that night, Bailey's band thing, and I said, I can't come. This may be my last night with Punky. And he understood. He said, I understand, Mom. So the next morning, me and my husband, we get ready, and I take Punky and lay him on my bed with a towel, and I'm talking to him while I'm getting dressed, and I explained to him, I said, Punky, you may be going somewhere that I can't go with you. But you still hope that maybe there's something they can do. My husband, he drove me while I carried Punky in the towel. I don't know if you know this, but my Punky always he had getting in a car, it made him so nervous and anxious, he would almost always poop in the carrier. And at that point, I thought maybe I should have put him in the carrier, made him poop, but I didn't. I carried him, and we went in. The doctor checked him out, and she said her best guess was he had absolutely no feeling. She did the pain test on him, and he had absolutely no feeling in that leg all the way up, nothing. And I better check my camera because I can't go through this one more time. Okay, yeah. She said her best guess was that he had had a stroke in his spinal column that had damaged the nerve on that side for that leg. And I said, he hasn't pooped. She said, he can't get in the stance. And I said, no, he can't. She said, that's why. She said, he can't get in the stance, and they have to be able to get in the stance, to do it. And my husband was in the room, and I don't think he'd ever been to the vet's office with me. And for some reason, she knew that I was going to collapse, and she kept talking to him. And she said, at this point, I could try, if he was a younger animal, I would try giving him cortisone. She said, but I can't honestly say that it would work. I'm not saying it won't, but given his age, that she said, it's debatable. And I said, he's not going to get better. And she looked at me and she said, he's not going to get better. There's nothing I can do for him. And I looked at her and I said, you're going to have to say it because I cannot say it. And she said, And I know that they can't say your animal needs to, you know, be put to sleep. But she said he's not going to get better, and his quality of life is so bad at this point. She said, and if he cannot poop, she literally used the word, she said he has to be able to, she said he can't not poop, and he's not pooping, and she said, and there's nothing I can do for him. And at that point, my husband pipes up and he said, well, can we just take him home? And I looked at my husband and I said, do you really want to do that? In hindsight, I wish I had taken him home, but even at, just to spend a couple more days and maybe do it on Monday, but but I didn't want to prolong his agony, and I didn't want to drag out the process of my grief. I had been grieving all week, actually, thinking that that's what's going to happen. And I'm sorry I couldn't do this faith video because I knew this was going to happen. I had already started to grieve in little mini steps, because I knew what was probably going to happen. And I told my husband, we can't let him go through this, we can't take him home. And he said, I know, I was just being selfish. I just wanted more time with him. And I said, okay, let's just do it. I told her, I said, only on one condition, I hold him the entire time. I'm not letting him go. And at that point, my husband, they left the room. Of course, they go get the paper. I called it the death warrant. You literally sign your pet's death warrant, is what it is. You can see how I am just not taking any of this well, and it's been almost a week. And tomorrow will be a week. My husband said, are you sure you want to stay in here? I said, I promised him when he was a kitten that I would never abandon him, never leave him. I said, and I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to be there to the very end. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. They give them the shot to make them go to sleep first, but they're not dead. And then that's to ease you into that process. And he was making strange noises and kind of doing a little hiccup thing. And I said, why is he doing that? She said, well, he's just asleep right now. They left the room. They came back in a little bit with the shot. She says, I'm going to have to shave a little bit of his leg to find a vein. And I lost it. I totally lost it. I cried I sobbed so hard I couldn't breathe. And I looked back at her, and I was so lost. I didn't even know that he was still alive. Because he wasn't moving, and I said, is he dead? And she said, no, honey, we haven't given him the shot yet. We're waiting for you. And I said, well, just go ahead then. I'm going to say this, and I will never have to say it again, hopefully. I saw him take his last gasp of breath before he died. And my Punky is gone. I had him cremated. I went and picked up his ashes yesterday. The vet's office, they took care of having him picked up. There is a cremation service not far from us. And I went and picked him up. I didn't know it was going to take a week to get his ashes back. They would have delivered him to the vet's office today, but I said, I can't wait one more day. And this is what I said. I had to close that circle. He was mine as a kitten. We went through 17 years of our lives together. And then he died. And there was this gap. right there that I needed him back in my life to close the circle. And now the circle's closed. He's in a very, very small tin that they give you, because they make urns totally out of your price range. But he's in a little tin, and after I picked him up, I didn't cry. I was very sad. I looked at the little tin, and I had looked at the bag inside. Those ashes, which are not really ashes. It looks more like ground bone fragments. And he fit in a tin that was like 2 by 2 by 4. That's it. And the more I thought about it, I said, my God, what if you have your bird cremated? Do they give it back to you in a thimble? But I took him. I said, Punky, I need to go get a picture of you blown up so I can make you a little memorial, because that's what I did. That's my process that I had. He was my first. He was mine the longest. We bonded when he was 4 months old. The other cats I have in the house, I've not bonded to any of them. They were adults when they came into the house, and even Marco was a kitten, but he was not interested in bonding. Punky, he tamed himself. He made a decision to. He was wild, and he made a decision. My son tamed him, actually, and finally talked him into coming to him, and that's when he brought him to me, and he was mine then. But I told Punky, I said, Punky, I'm gonna go get your picture. So I had it on my phone, the one I wanted, and maybe I'll show you all the little memorial I have for him later. But it's an 8 by 10, so I can see it from across from my chair, so I can go look over at him and know that he's still there. His little ashes tin sits right in front of the frame, along with some of the little figurines. Like my husband got a little glass, hand-blown glass. We have a hand-blown glass place here in town, and it was orange inside. He got that for me for our anniversary one year, and one of them is a witch, and she's holding an orange cat wearing a witch hat. And I said, me and Punky. And then there's another one. There's a fairy with the fairy wings. It might be a Jim Shore. I'm not sure. And she's holding an orange cat that has little fairy wings, and it was all about me and Punky. So it's his 8 by 10 picture, the fairy statue, the witch statue, the glass figurine, and his bowl with his name that I had written on this side of it that's faded, and his ashes. So he's with me. The circle has closed, and the journey of life for me continues with a great big missing piece. But I'll be better. I know I will. And I'm going to get back with this. And thank you for listening. That's my story of how my cat drifted out of my life.